Hello, this screencast is a short introduction to PySemantic, which is a Python library that we've been developing at Data Culture for automatic data validation and cleaning. My name is Jaidev Deshpande. I'm a data scientist at Data Culture Analytics. I've been a software developer at Enthought, where I've worked on the Canopy data analysis platform. I've worked as a research assistant in the fields of machine learning and signal processing, and I've contributed some of my work to the scientific Python stack. Here's a problem that many of us face. We curate and ingest our data, then we try to standardize it across the team. We perform some exploratory analysis on it, then we do some feature engineering on the dataset. We stick these features into a classifier or a regressor, which then gives us deeper insights into the data, hopefully. Now, the first two stages of this pipeline are very critical and also the most messy. Quite often, data scientists work in large and distributed teams, which means that communication about what has happened in the initial stages is important. Standardizing the structure of the data is important before any analysis can start happening. And when I say communication, I don't necessarily mean verbal communication. It could be communication via documentation or via code. When our data sources increase in number, or when our acquisition systems undergo changes, the data gets messier. And most of the data out there is highly unstructured anyway. So, messier data leads to more communication, which has its own set of problems. Maybe someone did get a message about which columns they had to drop before starting the analysis. Maybe someone was reading the data types in the dataset wrongly, and so on. Ultimately, the person who curated the data, this could be the client or someone in your team who's talking to the client, ends up answering questions about the data endlessly. The problem that we were trying to answer when we started developing PySemantic is, how do I describe the structure of the data effectively? Now, there were very obvious solutions. Arbitrary scripting to manage the data, text documentation, version control, or any combination of these. But these tools only make it more manageable to distribute the massive amount of information we have about the data. None of them really try to make it more concise. Most of them focus only on making the communication happen more smoothly. There aren't any tools that actually compress the amount of communication required and make life easier for everyone involved. Moreover, these tools do not scale with the diversity of the data. When we are tapping into multiple sources of unstructured data, managing these tools can very quickly get out of hand. And worst of all, the process of cleaning such data is reactive and unnecessarily redundant. PySemantic solves all these problems and more. It groups datasets under projects, just like an IDE groups source code and build tools under an entity called a project. Every project has a centralized data dictionary that holds all the properties of the dataset registered under that project. It provides a single entry point to the software framework required for cleaning, reading, and validating a dataset. Then all you have to do in order to ensure reproducibility is to share the data dictionary for a particular project, and PySemantic will make sure that everyone's on the same page regarding the data. So let's get our hands dirty. You can download PySemantic from this URL. The GitHub page also contains detailed instructions on how to set it up. For the purpose of this screencast, I have created a dummy dataset which contains about 10,000 rows and these 4 columns. As you can see, the column date here contains timestamps. The column zip contains zip codes. This represents data that looks integer but is not really integer. It's actually categorical data, string data. But the parser might be fooled into thinking that these are integers. Then there's a column which contains proper floating point numerical data. And then there's another column which contains unstructured text data, which in this case contains email data. But as you can see, it's malformed. Some of these cells don't contain valid email addresses. So let's see what happens when you try to read this data set without making any assumptions about what it contains. So this is called an IPython notebook. It is very much like a Mathematica or a Sage notebook in that it tries to bundle together code and text and images in a single free-flowing format. The library that we'll be using for parsing this data is called Pandas, which is a Python library for doing fancy operations on tabular data. So here's the data here's the CSV file that we just saw. We read it, and these are the first 5 rows. And as expected, the zip column was accidentally interpreted as integer, and the leading zeros in some of the zip codes were stripped. So pandas needs to be told that the column zip has type string and not integer. So we can do that with the dtype input argument to the read CSV function. It simply takes a dictionary which maps a single Python data type to each of the rows available. And that solves the problem. You can see that the leading zeros have appeared and the data type of the zip column is string and not integer anymore. There's an additional input argument that we can give the parser, which is called parseDates, which basically is a list of columns which we expect to contain timestamps, and we would like pandas to pass those columns into native Python timestamp objects. But if we try to see what the actual data type really was, it says just object, which means that Panda still thinks that the date column contains arbitrary Python objects, not datetime objects. To get to the bottom of the issue, we use the toDateTime function, which does this explicitly. It takes a series which is expected to contain timestamps and converts it into native timestamp objects. And as you can see, that raises an error which says that the month must be between 1 to 12, obviously. So as it turns out, the data had some malformed timestamps where the month was actually 0. So then we dig a little deeper, try to split out the part of each cell which corresponds to the month. We figure out which of them are equal to 0, and then we drop those rows from our data set. When we later again try to infer the type of the data set of the date column, it gives me the correct timestamp. It gives me the correct type of the data, which is datetime 64 with a resolution of nanoseconds. Now let's tackle the only numerical column that we have in the data set, simply called X. This is a histogram of the column, and you'll notice that it has 2 peaks. One is here and the other one is here. Now imagine that these are actually outliers and we would like to drop them. So pandas again has a very handy way of doing that. We just drop off all the rows that are maybe we can declare a threshold somewhere between 8 and 10, maybe at about 9.0, and we can ask pandas to drop all the columns that are above 9. So that cleans the data up for us, and here is the cleaned histogram, or so-called outliers aren't there anymore. Now let's try and clean the email column. As you can see in the first 5 rows, the very second row of the email column doesn't have a valid email address, it's just somebody's name. So then we try to write a regular expression which matches email addresses, and everything that matches this regular expression is supposed to be a valid email address. We try to apply this regular expression to the data frame, and pandas will automatically drop anything that doesn't match it, and then we try to print the data again, and as you can see, the bad columns are gone, the bad rows are gone. So we have managed to change the type of the zip column, remove the outliers from the numerical column, remove the malformed text from the text column, and manage to pass the timestamps into a format that is native to Python. Doing all this required a long notebook, and if the data were even more malformed than it was, maybe it would take longer. The point is that doing so much to just clean up the data set is a painful process, and PySemantic is something that tries to automate this whole process for you. So let's summarize what we did there. We had a data set with about 10,000 rows and 4 columns. We specified explicitly the data type of each column. and some of the data that was malformed we fixed, and we were able to read the entire CSV into pandas data frame such that it was now ready for analysis. But that took a lot of work. So let us see how PySemantic makes it easy for us to do so. If you have installed PySemantic, you should notice that you have a very handy command line interface tool called simply semantic available at your prompt. You just type semantic at your terminal and it will give you the list of subcommands and options that it accepts. So let's just try semantic list, which simply lists out all the projects that are currently registered under PySemantic. That didn't return anything because we haven't yet registered a project under PySemantic. So let's try and create a project called demo project, and we'll need a data dictionary for the project. So let's try and make the data dictionary first. A typical data dictionary looks like this. Now if you recall, we had a CSV file called dummy data. So we just write the name of the data set that we would like to identify this file with. Let's just call it dummy data again. We specify the path to the CSV that contains the data, and again, if you recall, we had to change the data types of two of the columns that it read. One was called zip, which it incorrectly read as integer. So we specify here in this data dictionary that it is a string and not an integer. And there was the date column, which also was being read as string, not being parsed properly because it had the month fields as zeros. So we specify in the data dictionary that the date column has a date type, has the type date type dot date. And what we did with the numerical column X was that we capped it at 9 units. So you can specify individual rules for columns like this. If there is a numerical column, you can just say that the maximum value I want in that column is n, and it will cap it at that point. There was a text column called email, which we wanted to match with a regular expression that tells us whether the text in a particular cell is a valid email address or not. So we just put the regular expression for detecting emails here. This is concisely our data dictionary. It contains the name of the data set, it contains the paths to the data set, it contains information about what are the data types, what data types the columns are supposed to have. It contains information on what operations need to take place on the data set, on the columns before we read it and before it is ready for analysis. Let's save this file and add it as the data dictionary of project in semantic. We can use that again. We can do that with the command line interface again. We can just say semantic add demo and the path to the data dictionary. If you have noticed, the data dictionary is actually a YAML file. Now we chose YAML over many other formats to structure a data dictionary because, as you can see, it is very readable. Even a layman can work their way around a YAML file, and they'll probably, with a little bit of practice, this sort of format would be very easy for them to pick it up. So let's see what happens now that the project is added and we have added a data set under it. So we can just do semantic list again. Here you can see it tells you that the project demo with a spec file is simply data dictionary. So project demo with spec file at that path exists. So this is a new notebook. We simply import the project class from the PySemantic library. We instantiate that project with the name of the project that we want to get started. As you recall, the name of the project was just demo, and the object demo, which is basically an instance of the project class, has simply a method called load dataset, And to this, we pass the name of the dataset that we earlier specified in the schema. As you see, the name of the dataset is simply dummy data. So we go back, we tell the demo object to load the dataset dummy data, and there it is. Data now is the pandas data frame that we had obtained after cleaning up all those things in the last notebook. In order to validate that PySemantic did actually clean everything up properly, we run this loop which prints out the name of the column and the data type of the column in the data frame. So as you see, the column date has the type of date type 64 bits with a resolution of nanoseconds. The zip object is the zip data type has data type object, which means that it's a string. Similarly, emails are also strings, and the X is a double float. And if you recall that because the zip column was being misinterpreted as integers, some of the leading zeros were getting skipped. Now they're not. We have just managed to get the lengths of all the cells in the zip column, and they are all 5. So they are all valid zip codes. And we try to print out the maximum value of the X column, which is somewhere around 8.99, which is exactly as we had intended. Let's go back to the data dictionary and see what else can be done with it. You can always go back and add another column here, another data set. This particular data dictionary simply contains the schema for one data set, but under the same project, that is demo, you can add another data set too. It can have its own arbitrary column types. These columns can have their own rules, and you can add any number of data sets to a single project in this manner. Now, it might seem from the example that all we have done in the process of cleaning data is save a few lines of code, but PySemantic can be much more powerful than that. If you look at the documentation, you will find a long list of configurations which can be used in the data dictionary to perform highly complex data analysis operations fully automatically. Most of these are operations that would be repetitive grunt work otherwise. In addition, PySemantic has a full-featured and clean API which allows Python programmers to write their own configuration options and data cleaning routines. In other words, it is fully hackable. The project itself is free and open source, distributed under the BSD 3-clause license. All sorts of feedback, bug reports, and even bug fixes are more than welcome. Thanks for watching.